Hey everyone, my name is Asmara and welcome back to the channel. And in case you're new here, I really enjoy talking about the intersection of identity, media, and social issues. And so today we're doing something that's like a combination of those things. So I have an entire playlist called Diary of a Black Girl Gamer where I talk about, my experience being a Black woman online in gaming and just being a Black woman gamer in general. And some of the joy that brings, the pride that brings, but then also some of the hardships and the nuances of having that intersection of identity. And so I pulled some clips from some of those videos in that playlist, some gems. I feel like I make a lot of long form content, and so I feel like it's helpful to like condense it down sometimes. So I thought it'd be interesting if I played these clips for you guys and expanded on some of my thoughts and, give you some additional thoughts that I have. Let's go ahead and get into it. I have them pulled up on my computer right here, and I'm just going to react and talk to you guys as the video clips are playing. So this first clip is actually from my video. I did the panel discussion about claiming space for Black women in gaming, where I got 3 other content creators, Simi T, Simkoya, and Cozy K on a panel. And we talked about our experiences being Black women in gaming, and then also some of the unique experiences we face online. And so, yeah, that's what this first video is. My first time doing like a full panel in a YouTube video, but I'm really proud of it. So let's get into this first clip. So I kind of created my channel on this idea of like representation and visibility. And so I want to ask you guys, like, what has been your experience with like representation in gaming? And this can go beyond just race. Can you recall the first time you remember seeing yourself or a character that you could kind of see yourself represented in gaming?
When I realized that there were gamers online, I was really shocked to find, like you said, other Black women who were making games, but not like, I don't know, when you think of gamers, even me being a gamer, I never really thought about myself as a gamer. But when you, well, growing up, when I thought of like a gamer, I thought of like first person shooters or people like screaming through their headset. So when I realized that people were just kind of living their normal everyday lives, but also sharing gameplay, I was like, wow, I like doing this too. So that definitely made me feel represented.
And I want to expand on what Simi T said here, because something I definitely noticed is that a lot of times people, whether it's like peers or other people I've met through this space, may not communicate that they are a gamer or may not really claim that as a term that could be for them because of stereotypes like she just explained. The more representation we see of diverse people, not just Black women, but diverse people saying that they're a gamer or even making gaming content, we start to redefine what that looks like, and it allows other people who may have not, thought of gaming for them, it gives them permission and more comfortability to start claiming that for themselves and taking up space in the various parts of their identity. So definitely super important that we have diversity in the way gamers are represented to begin with.
Because like I said, I didn't have anyone surrounding me that enjoyed video games, especially not the type of games that I enjoy playing. So
that part. And also gamers do not just have to be people who enjoy games that have a lot of stealth or strategy or, shooting, like we said. So expanding the gamut of what gaming is and what it can look like is super important. That's also why we selected this panel, is because we're kind of like all the type of gamers that like more of a casual style. So that's something I wanted to be intentional as well, is kind of having a panel of people who society may not traditionally constitute as being a quote unquote real gamer. Reference back to my other video essay on that topic.
As far as seeing myself represented in a character, okay. So for so long I played games like Spyro, Frogger, Crash Bandicoot. So there weren't actually humans in and I do not want to say the first time I saw myself represented was like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas playing as Carlos.
No, but seriously though.
Right. So when you just mentioned like shooting and screaming, I was like, yeah.
GTA San Andreas is an iconic game though. Definitely super funny.
That's probably not good though.
It's probably my first time too.
Yeah, so I'm like, there's gotta be something else. But even in my fighting games, I don't recall there ever being a Black female fighting character. There'll be an Asian one, a white woman, but not Black. There might be a big black guy, but as far
That's also super important is that when we think of diversity in blackness, we're not just thinking about, a stereotype of like black men, for example, which typically gets to be the protagonist. If we are going to have a black character, it's like a big, muscular, angry black guy. But having black women also in as protagonists, and again, not just assuming a stereotype, not just, for the purposes of diversity, it's not just about, throwing black people in your game or throwing black people, in your company or your workspace. It's about being inclusive and investing in their stories, making sure we're not perpetuating, harmful tropes or stereotypes. Yes, it's super important that we have a diverse representation of black characters in media. And I actually recently played Season, A Letter to the Future, which features a black protagonist, a black woman protagonist at that. And it's really interesting because the game is definitely more explorative and calming. It's more of like a walking simulator, like an open world, like adventure. And it has more like philosophical themes. And so definitely different from like a fighting game style. And we just need to see more representations of black characters taking on different types of roles.
far as like seeing people creating content online, like when I found Ocean Sims, I was
Shout out
like,
to
what in the
Ocean.
world? Because before I saw her channel, I saw these like large YouTubers who were not people of color, and they played in a different style than I
Yeah.
do. So when I saw hers, and she had this really cool and relaxed, casual, like just chill gameplay. She wasn't screaming or had all these like, um really like out there like edits and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, she plays just like I play. And I felt
And I feel like this is a really important thing to highlight is how creators can also expand the way that we see ourselves represented in games. I want to use it as encouragement for any people out there who may be considering starting a gaming channel or just, a channel in general. Just remember that you have the opportunity to be the proof for whatever identities or intersections that you fall upon. Somebody could come across your videos and really see themselves in you, and it can spark something inside of them. It gives them permission to show up more authentically. And oh no, my earring's fallen out. But I need to get a new earring backing. Yes, content creators can definitely affect the way that we see ourselves in video games, in video game culture, in this industry. So start the channel and don't underestimate the power of showing up as yourself and taking up space.
really cool about that, like because like since I found people online that were playing, I didn't see anybody who played like me. It was still fun to watch, but the little piece of relatability was
Yeah.
missing. So yeah, seeing
Relatability
Ocean
is key.
definitely let me see myself in like gaming online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Kennedy?
I would say I always felt really represented in The Sims, which is weird because like you're creating the characters, but I think the ability to create a character that like looks like you.
Something else I wanted to add about gaming companies or platforms like doing better, or they should be doing better about, inclusivity. It actually reminded me of a tweet I saw recently from Kiwi on the Sticks. She's a Twitch streamer. So it was a part of this larger Twitter thread, but basically she said, be mindful of the Black people around you, amplify their sponsored posts, their cute selfies, their jokes, and not just their worries, concerns, and sadness. Support Black business, support Black prosperity, support Black joy and accomplishments. It is free 99. So basically, I felt like that was a powerful way of saying like there's ways to support Black creators or Black people, especially at a time like this, Black History Month, which I mean, that should be all year round, but this time especially is something where we can amplify, Black humanity. It's so important that we don't just talk about racism and we're not just supporting Black people, for the performative, just because it looks good for us, but that we support Black creators in all parts of themselves, all parts of their humanity. And we shouldn't just rely on company efforts or the lack thereof to be inclusive. Like, us as consumers have so much power in showing that diverse creators is what we want to see more of. And so by investing in Black creators, more than just for 28 or 29 days, beyond, when they speak out about racial or social justice issues or, the ways we are being overlooked, not speaking for Black creators, not speaking over Black creators, like just amplifying our voices and making us seen and known and valued. Like, you really have to invest in Black humanity, you know, to be a part of the work, to be a part of the anti-racism work. So, and I'll talk more about that actually later on in this video. But it's not just about holding companies accountable, which, you know, we should be. That is one part. But know the power that you have as a consumer as well to celebrate our humanity. But back to Kennedy talking about feeling represented in The Sims.
Okay, like I see myself in a game, and like a game is reflecting my life, and that was just like a really cool feeling. And yeah, I don't think I saw representation of like a character for a very, very long time. But just that little like ability to customize, I think, makes you be able to connect so much better to a game.
Another thing I also wanted to elaborate on is the fact that game customization features also should come a long way. So I love that she mentioned customization because, you know, that definitely does make it feel more relatable when you're able to kind of put a part of yourself in a game and kind of have that reflected back. But I also think at the same time, like, equal responsibility should also be on having the features that can allow you to create yourselves, you know, even more accurately or the most accurate possible in the game. So having Black hairstyles, making sure that game developers aren't just throwing in dreads and an afro for the Black folk, because we have plenty of other hairstyles. And not to say you have to include every single one, but just being intentional about things like that, like customization features. One of the big examples I can think of is like Sims 4 with the skin tones, you know, having the different undertones for Black skin. Because that affects, you know, the pigment and the way it shows up. So that's another thing, having body diversity, like being able to customize, you know, your body different ways. And not to say that every single game has to be super in depth like that, but just giving people the options definitely creates more inclusive game environments and more inclusive games and a more inclusive gaming culture. I feel like that's definitely key as well.
Thing I also thought about is like, growing up, I never really thought about the fact that I didn't see myself, whether it was in games or in films. I never really thought about it. I enjoyed the movies that I liked and the games that I played. And if there was anyone that looked remotely Black, if they had brown skin or like they were slightly darker, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is my character. This is me, you know?
Yeah. Same.
So I never really thought about it until probably later, until adulthood or maybe high school, only because of certain situations. But it wasn't something that I was overly conscious about.
Yeah, maybe like I think we just didn't expect it. Like,
yeah,
that part
anywhere else, so we're like, why would we see it anywhere?
yeah.
True. Yes, that part. But yeah, that was our first video clip. I know I had a lot of stuff to say and a lot to elaborate on. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the second video clip. So this clip was pulled from my You're Not Black Enough video essay, where I deconstruct the nerd or the Black nerd archetype, the Blerd. And so, yeah, I talk about themes about what it means to be Black, what it means to be a nerd, why those two identities conflict, and how to kind of, or how I've at least kind of come to terms with Blackness as a non-monolithic experience, a diverse experience, a spectrum. This is definitely one of my favorite videos I've created because, for starters, I love the conversations that have been started in the comment section of this video. It's one of those videos that have also gradually grown over, you know, since its release. Like, I continuously get people commenting on this video in particular and watching it and coming back to it. And I think that's really special. I love that people were able to feel seen and that I was able to, you know, represent a community of people that don't often get represented, especially not in Blackness. I definitely really love the intersectionality and the different types of conversations that got had in the comments. So there's a lot of really interesting perspectives that I feel like got pulled from this video. So it's one I'm really proud of. So let's go ahead and react to it. So why Blerd? I think Blerd.com explained this pretty eloquently. One of the writers writes, representation matters. Quite simply, Blerds were not traditionally shown in the media and have had little representation in pop culture. Not only that, but when we combine the intersection of African American and nerd culture, sometimes we see or describe things a bit differently. Blerds tend to add their own bit of flavor into the mix when talking about all things nerdy. Calling yourself a blerd doesn't mean you want to separate from anything. It only means that you are telling the world that you want to still identify with the part of you that makes you black. And this is why we have things like Blerdcon and other communities for like nerd subcultures, such as the Black Girl Gamers, Black Girl Nerds, Sugar Gamer, I Need Diverse Gaming. And I think it's really important that, you know, anybody who may be struggling, I guess, with this part of their identity, or just, you know, wants more community, because I think belonging is really what, you know, everybody wants. Check out these communities, check out these Twitter pages and what they're up to. Blerdcon, I forget where Blerdcon is held. Let me see. Oh, it's actually coming back this summer in early July, and it's in Arlington, Virginia. So if you're from the DMV area, or if you want to, you know, pull up, that's definitely something that you guys can check out. Oh, another convention that's also in the DMV that kind of highlights Black nerd subculture is Dreamcon. It was created by RDC World. They create content, you know, across the internet. You may have seen them or one of their skits, but yeah, they have a convention that's about celebrating like gaming culture, anime, like all different types of things. So another thing that you can look into. I will say the blerd identity is also pretty similar to the quirky, awkward black girl or the quirky, awkward black boy trope, if you're familiar with that. Or even the idea of being called an Oreo, being black on the outside but white on the inside. I've also heard of coconut, like brown on the outside, white on the inside. I've heard that being referenced by a couple of people from the UK. So, but that's another word for the same thing, essentially. In the fact that all of these different archetypes basically exist to categorize Black people who may not feel like they fit into the mold or the stereotype of Blackness. So as time progresses and as society progresses, more Black people are starting to embrace this idea that Blackness is not a monolithic experience, with terms like blerd or the quirky, awkward Black girl or Black boy. However, not all Black people are fond of this term because it seems like another way to sort of categorize Black people further and put ourselves into more categories or groups, which is definitely an understandable perspective. But the difference is terms like blerd or the quirky, awkward Black girl or Black boy was directly created by Black people to embrace the fact that the Black experience is diverse and multifaceted. I think that's an important piece when we talk about this archetype, is that it's an example of like reclamation or reclamation. You know, taking something that was seen or that some people see as a negative quality or like a fault, a character fault, and turning it into something positive or reclaiming it as something that you can be proud of. And so I gave a shout out to Issa Rae, The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl, her web series. And there's so many other like movies and shows that are coming out now that kind of highlight Black nerdy things. When you even think about like Black Panther, like a sci-fi Marvel movie, which those types of things used to be more nerdy subcultures, but now it's kind of like mainstream culture. That is an entire film, or the two films, Black Panther and then Wakanda Forever, about Black people in tech, in STEM, Black people as superheroes. And in the description of this video, I link to a bunch of like movies and shows that kind of talk about these issues or have these type of characters. And I also link to some other video essays from other content creators who talk about the Black nerd subculture that are really interesting. T1J has a great video about Black nerds. So be sure to check out the description of not this video you're watching, but the Blerd essay video, which the Blerd essay video will be in the description. Everything I'm reacting to today will be in the description, the original videos. It allows Black people to be whatever the hell they want to be. In the words of Donald Glover,
because whiteness is blankness. It's because they look at it as a blank slate. Like when you come in, you can be anything. Like when I walk in, even if I have a bow tie, they might be like, is he Muslim?
But when you take a step back and think about it and examine all the things Black culture is known for popularizing and all of the things Black people are oftentimes recognized for and applauded for, not very often are they things in more nerdy fields. So no wonder there's such an internalized marginalization of Black people who possess more nerdy qualities or characteristics. That person doesn't really seem to fit the mold of what we have imagined the Black American to be like. And this prejudice isn't just from outside forces, like this is also happening within the Black community itself. And that's something else I definitely wanted to highlight, is how it's not just other people who kind of have this pressure, it's society at large, but then also I wanted to call attention to the tension happening within the Black community, because I think it's something that needs to be called out. People need to be held accountable. And again, like this just kind of creates more nuance to this sort of stereotype and this type of marginalization. It's not always people outside of our community, you know, enforcing certain expectations onto us. We also have expectations of each other, and I feel like those will need to be challenged as well.
For starters, there's the social pressure of what it means to be Black, and that does not mean being nerdy for the most part.
People take race and ethnicity with so much pride that if you're excluding people who you don't feel like fit whatever ideal you have for your race or ethnicity, you don't realize how bad it makes them feel.
And I love how Sydney is like making her face as she's talking here. But I also wanted to include people from a diverse array of fields or industries or spaces, because I really wanted to show how universal of a feeling not feeling Black enough is. Like, this particular video kind of breaks down the nerd archetype. Like, that's kind of like the foundation of how I started my research on this topic. But honestly, the idea of not being Black enough is so universal, but I feel like that was too broad of a topic to start off with. So I included different people's perspectives. You know, some of the people I've included, beauty gurus, like I included, I'm pretty sure, Jackie Ina at the beginning, Sydney, Sid B as well. I thought that was important to show a diverse array of perspectives and articles from a diverse array of people.
So all of these perceivably nerdy or white characteristics, all of these things is not how we have internally been conditioned to recognize the role that Black people play in the world. And so due to this internalized contradiction between Blackness and nerdiness, the term Blerd was born.
So yes, that is video number 2. Definitely important themes explored in this one. And I really like how we get to tap into identity and how we also as Black people kind of see ourselves sometimes, and some of the issues that comes when you encounter someone that may not fit into what you think Blackness should be or look like. But the truth is, Blackness is not a monolithic experience, and that's kind of just like the point of this essay, was to show the diversity that is within Black culture. And I use the nerd archetype because that's something we often see in gaming, but again, like I was saying, definitely a universal conversation. And this last clip we're going to be looking at is from my Juneteenth/Father's Day video essay I did last year. So Father's Day fell on Juneteenth, and I was already going to do a video for Juneteenth, but then I figured since it's Father's Day, we can kind of, you know, celebrate that theme even more. So I decided to talk about Lee Everett from The Walking Dead and the history of like Black fatherhood in America, and why I think Lee's relationship with Clementine in particular was really special. So yeah, here's a clip from that.
So now that we've established the history of the American dad, as well as why it's so important that we celebrate and acknowledge Black fatherhood and Black families, I wanted to give an example relating to a video game. You know how we do around here. And so if you've been following the channel for a while, you know I love a good story-driven game. And I think one of the most iconic story-driven games is The Walking Dead. And we're gonna be particularly talking about Lee Everett, my man Lee, a real legend, a real GOAT in these streets, because I really think he embodies a really great and important depiction that we need to see more of Black men in society, and especially of Black fathers. So the first thing I love about Lee's character in The Walking Dead is that Lee is not a biological father, but he becomes one. I think Lee's story is one of redemption. He starts out at the beginning of the game, you know, he starts out in the back of a cop car, a criminal. You know, he doesn't come from the best.
I will say, at the beginning of the game, when you see the Black guy in the back of the cop car, that is a little bit like, what type of story are we getting into here? But I do think that Telltale, and again, Telltale is not perfect by any means, but I really liked the way that they showed his character, not just as that one way that we kind of assume, the path we assume he's going to go down from the beginning of the game and from the beginning sequence. I really like to see kind of his humanity explored greater in this game, which I don't think all video games necessarily do with Black characters or other non-white characters. So yeah, something else I thought I'd add.
Past, which, you know, when you first start out, you see the black guy, he's you know, in the cop car, you're like, a little side eye. But once you actually get to know the story and get to know the background, I love how Lee was not tied to the stereotypes that oftentimes get associated with Black men and Black masculinity, of being aggression, being like aggressive, like thugs, criminals. He may have started the game kind of in that way, but he really gets to reestablish himself, and you really get to see his true character shine throughout the game. And one of the main ways we see that is with his relationship with Clementine. So Clementine is a little girl that Lee stumbles upon as soon as the game starts. Clementine is left all alone. Her parents went out on a trip, left her with the babysitter. Babysitter obviously gets clapped or bitten by the zombies. And so Clementine's left alone, and she needs a sort of parent figure, and Lee is able to become that for her. Lee is able to become what Clementine needs her to be. And I think that is really indicative of good fatherhood and just good parenthood, is really lessening of yourself and really becoming what somebody else needs you to be. And so Lee becomes Clementine's protector, he becomes her provider, and really just builds this really meaningful and special relationship with this little girl. Lee is not perfect. He obviously has no like previous parenthood experience.
That's something else I do like about Lee's character, is like exploring like the imperfections. Like I think sometimes what happens with Black characters is that if you fall into tropes, you're not really showing the full gamut of humanity. And not that every single character has to be fleshed out, but when all the white characters are fleshed out and are nuanced, and then all the non-white characters are not in your show or your game or whatever production you're on, that's where, you know, we have an issue. Especially when you have a protagonist, I think it's important that you show nuance. Lee is not perfect. Obviously, you know, the way he started the game, you can tell he has his imperfections. The way he engages with Clementine is not always perfect and smooth sailing. He is awkward. Yeah, like I was about to say, you could say that. Lee is awkward. But it's also kind of just a part of his character, like, you know, showing him as a human being, you know, with good parts and challenging parts. But at the end of the day, he's still like a lovable character, but he's complex. He's not just like, he is this stereotype. He wasn't just cast as like the stereotype or to fill this role or that role. So that's something else I love.
Does his best. He doesn't really know exactly the perfect things to say, but he tries, and just he checks up on Clementine. He looks out for her. So that's the first thing I love. I love the redemption story in Lee's dynamic with Clementine. I love how he really just steps up to the plate and becomes the man, the father figure that Clementine needs, even without having experience. It's the not being perfect, but doing your best, which I love. We definitely just see more examples of redefining Black masculinity in those ways in media. And so I think Walking Dead is probably a piece ahead of its time. It sucks to say, like, you know, 10 years ago, this is like, you know, monumental in video game history, but The Walking Dead really was, again, having a Black male protagonist to begin with, but then showing him in a way that Black men aren't normally portrayed in media was also super important as well.
And something else I wanted to expand on is also, I came across an Instagram thread or like a carousel. If I still have it, I'm not sure if I saved it, but basically was like a carousel of different tropes to be careful of or mindful of if you are creative and looking to either write a Black character in your story or draw a Black character in your work. Thinking about different kind of tropes you could fall into and being mindful of them. So remember, like, one of the examples was like being mindful if the Black character is only there to offer like wisdom or advice, is there to be like the magical Negro. There's like, if there's a Black woman side character, if she's just meant to be the sidekick. Or not even just a Black woman, just like a Black character that's just the sidekick, or a Black woman who is just sassy or just there to, you know, help the more important white protagonist and she's not invested in further. Like those types of tropes, like making sure that you're aware of stereotypes, you're aware of tropes. And again, if I can find the carousel, I'll link it, but if I can't, I apologize. I'll try to find something similar. But basically the point is, okay, the earring, I'm just gonna leave it on the ground. The point is, be mindful of stereotypes and tropes and be educated about them if you are creative trying to look to write a Black character. Just to make sure you're not, perpetuating already harmful stereotypes that people already hold. Making sure, and not to say that like none of your characters, your diverse characters, can possess any wrong or like faulty qualities, if that makes sense. It kind of goes to like what I was saying earlier. Like, it's just, I think what's most important is that we engage with the complexity of humanity and not just, one-dimensional characters that play into existing stereotypes. Because I think the humanity piece is really what makes the big difference.
And I love the way they kind of showed that through this portrayal of him becoming a father and a protector over this little girl. I think the more we engage with just Black stories and Black humanity, the better off we'll be.
All right, yay. So that was my clip about Lee in The Walking Dead and his depiction in this game. And I actually think another thing that's important to note with Lee is that also Telltale used a Black voice actor for his character as well. That is something I do want to, bring attention to, because in video games you have the option to, animate or draw a character however you want, but then you can also like cast whoever you want to be the voice. But I think a really important reason why it's important, especially if you're making a lead of a character that comes from a marginalized community, it's important that you give the priority voice acting roles to members of that same community, because they can add their own nuances, they can add their own knowledge of the language, the culture, they can add their own colloquialisms like as part of their performance. And I think somebody who's just from that culture and community can deliver a performance more authentically. That's the word. Than if you were just to hire just whomever to voice the character. So that's something else I wanted to bring attention to, is like there's already like not a lot of opportunities for Black folk and folks from other marginalized communities, disabled communities, the LGBTQ plus community. So like when the opportunity is there, I see why it's important that we kind of give priority hiring to people who are already a part of that community, because we want more roles and to normalize the fact that we exist in this space. But if you're making Black characters, but then hiring non-Black voice actors, like sometimes it's taking that role away from somebody who could provide more of a more authentic performance. And there are plenty of qualified, Black and otherwise marginalized actors. So I think that's another thing important to keep companies accountable for. But all right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning into my reaction to these video clips. I wanted to just, take a moment to highlight some of my longer form video content, but then kind of, condense it a little bit down and add some of my, current thoughts, in retrospect, because I am proud of these videos. But of course, as everybody does, you change and you grow and you learn more over the years, or you would word things differently, or you have new perspectives and insights. So in no ways are these videos, perfect entirely, but I'm really proud of, the different identities and intersections I've been able to tackle on this channel. And I just want to take a moment just to revisit some of these projects and bring some new life to them and some new perspective. So if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like. Of course, in the description I will link the original videos of the 3 clips we watched today. So if you're interested in seeing my full essay or the full version of the video, you can do so. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you all so much for watching. What should you comment? Oh, you should comment if there's any other kind of identities or topics you would like to see me cover on the channel. All right, that's all. Bye, y'all.